Excellent. Good morning. Thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Brooke Berlin, for anyone who has not yet joined us on a webinar. Many of you actually have joined me on webinars before, and you know I usually like to set up in front of a piece of art from the country that I've traveled to, and I'm just going to ask you all to trust that I'm in my office looking at a beautiful Berber rug that I bought when I was in Imlil on way to the Kasbah du Toubkal. So I still have my art, but it's on the floor, not on the wall. And some of you have also emailed me already to ask why I'm doing this webinar, if I work with the team that's joined us today. And so just to kind of explain and give a little bit of context, I represent Tswalu Kalahari in South Africa, which is both a National Geographic Unique Lodge and a Virtuoso property. And so I've been able to meet Chris a couple of times over through that. And then I also represent Old Jogi in Kenya, and I've attended Pure on behalf of Old Jogi many times. And so have been able to spend time with Jose and his team there. And then my husband, Johan, he works with Tongabeze down in Zambia that has a really exceptional school, and we've been sponsoring a young girl there for years because women's education is something that's very, very important to me. And so when I learned about Education for All, which is the educational nonprofit that's been created in Morocco, it just really was very moving and something that I wanted to be a part of as well. And so I've been working with Sonia and her team to share a documentary that they filmed, to do some fundraising. And then also Johan works with MCC in Madagascar, and Edward Tucker Brown actually lives in Morocco. So Johan and I have been able to travel to Morocco to experience a lot of the country, to work with the team very specifically. And so I just wanted to bring them to you because I think that they're a really excellent team with a great offering and a message that carries forth everything that I kind of strive to work with in Africa. So with that, I'm going to introduce you to who we have today. Brothers Chris and Mike McHugo, the co-founders of the Kasbah du Toubkal, and then also Jose Costa, who is the marketing manager for Mountain Voyage Morocco, which is both a DMC and a Virtuoso Onsite, and then of course Sonia, Omar, who is the fundraising and communications manager for Education for All. So they're going to take you through details of everything, and then again Q&A. So please go ahead and use the chat function, or sorry, the Q&A function for me, and I'll moderate at the end. And Chris, over to you.
Lovely. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Some of you may already know me, so I'm going to give the first presentation today, which is really about the creation and restoration of an old building in Imlil, just outside Marrakesh, which has become known as the Kasbah du Toubkal. And this is really a story in part about two brothers who fell in love with Morocco back in the late 60s and early 70s, myself, Chris, and my brother, Mike. The slides have moved on rather quickly there.
Sorry about
Thank you. It's all right. We'll get used to this. So I first visited in 69, Mike visited in 73, and in the mid-70s set up an overland travel company, and to do some trekking in Morocco in the High Atlas. And the High Atlas Gateway is called Imlil, and the highest mountain in North Africa is called Jebel Toubkal at 4,167 meters. And here is the man who first built this building that you can see there. And this is Qaid Souktani, who would have been a friend of the Pasha of Marrakesh, the Glaoui, and here he is with his 1957 Ford Thunderbird just before the French left Morocco and Morocco found independence. And the old Kasbah fell into disrepair. He died shortly after independence, I think in 57 or 58, and this building fell into disrepair, and Mike and I saw it and had read that inward investment was going to be easier in the late 80s, and it was owned by 60 people, and slowly Mike's friend Hash Maurice found those 60 people, and we acquired this ruined building. And in 1992, we wrote a postcard to try and see if we could find some fundraisers, which said Discover Limited, which is an English tour operator, had plans to develop a small hotel designed and built on sustainable principles. Not that we really knew at 92 what sustainable principles were, but they sounded good, which will complement the site and be of benefit to visitors and the local inhabitants. And effectively, that was the start of a journey that had Mike sitting here with his friend Haj Maurice on the roof of his house in Imlil, looking up at the old Kasbah, which I think probably by the late 60s had fallen into disrepair, and we acquired it. And here is an early picture of some younger people in younger days. Haj Maurice is the small person, and he was born in Imlil and was a mountain guide and a downhill champion, for Morocco ski champion. And when we first moved there to start getting into this project in 89, 1991, there was no road to Imlil, there was no electricity, and there is still no road up to the Kasbah. And again, pointing there is the highest mountain in North Africa and also the highest mountain in the Arab world. I put a picture of a mule here because this is called the Berber Mercedes, or the Berber Cat, and in the mountains there are no roads. So it's either Shanks's pony, as we would say, or the back of a mule will get you up to the Kasbah and back down again. Imlil has developed a bit and is the tourist gateway for trekking in the High Atlas, but it's still a very lonely mountain village. It has a tourism season, and we felt when we first acquired the building that we could probably help global tourism develop and create what we've called at one level a restored Berber mansion. But as nobody knows what that is, we have a free range. A few quick shots of what the site looked like when we first found it. And it had been built by that man as a summer house. And as you can see, it was in deep disrepair. Here's the logo, which a nice artist drew for us. And in 1995, we opened in what we called phase one, a rather austere building. And the official opening happened in October 95. And here we have some local children. Morocco is a developing country. It has a very young population. And at the opening, we had a field kitchen set up and served about 180 chickens, 3 cows and 5 sheep to 700 people who joined from all the local villages. It's actually quite a populated valley, and it's also remote, but it's only 40 miles from Marrakesh. And shortly after we opened in 95, Martin Scorsese and his team had spotted the Kasbah and converted it into a Tibetan monastery for his film Kundun on the Dalai Lama. And over a period of about 6 weeks, the Kasbah was converted by Hollywood into this Tibetan, the exterior of a Tibetan monastery. The interior of that monastery is in fact still visible at the Film Museum in Ouarzazate. So one of the things that we negotiated when the film crew came along was to get a check for the village, and we rescinded one of the clauses in the contract which said they had to take everything out, and as a result we started a rubbish clearance service and helped establish the Association des Bassins d'Imlil, which was almost a confederation of associations were on the edge of a national park, but there were actually 400 NGOs working in the park at that time. But one of the things that we decided early on, as effectively guests of the local community there, was that we needed to give back to them, and the government really didn't start raising any taxes until the mid-90s, and up until that time they raised no taxes and gave no services. So we charge a 5% on our turnover, which goes to the Association des Bassins d'Imlil and delivers the sort of services that normally a local authority would apply. And here we have a gathering of the local community to welcome an ambulance that Mike found in Europe and drove across Europe to Morocco. Next slide. Which was an ex-NATO NATO ambulance. And here we have some of the local school kids in our grand salle watching a film, which again was somewhat of a surprise for them. But you will notice that there are many more boys than girls in the last picture. And here we have another greeting of the great and the good, welcoming the opening of a village hammam, a bathhouse, which again had been funded mainly by the Kasbah du Toubkal and the good works of Mike doing a lot of cycling. Until there was the village bathhouse, the locals would have to travel 17 miles down a dirt road to the gateway town of Imlil. And here we have the governor opening the hammam. And in 2015, we became one of the founder members of the National Geographic Unique Lodges of the world. So, and that's, as Brooks said earlier, one of the ways that we met each other. A few pictures. Condé Nast Traveller with 2 L's, i.e. the English version, were nice enough to say we had the best rooftop views in North Africa, which as a business gives us a challenge as to what to do next, because clearly having a target of building the second best lodge is probably not a good one. Next slide, please. We tried to use traditional styles and building techniques, and some of this was quite a challenge to find people who could remember how to do it. And you can see in the background there a village. We are surrounded by villages. We've used a marble from the edge of the Sahara, which is full of fossils. And here we have the master suite, which is about 100 square meters and can form the center part of a 3-bedroom house. The dining area of that suite, a 6-piece bathroom, and a breakfast terrace. And we have the highest chess set, we think, in Africa perhaps, but certainly in North Africa. The Kasbah is surrounded by, has its own gardens. This is the next slide. This is our grand salle, where we have surround sound can be used as a theater, as a yoga shala, a multifunction room. The Kasbah now covers that old site that you saw a picture of earlier. And it sits above the village of Imlil. And one of the things that does make it unique is that we have no road access. So the last 500 meters has to come up by foot or by mule. And some of you have probably already been there and done that. We also have 2 remote lodges. This one is about 4.5 hours walk away. So you need to make sure if you're booking it that you don't just book another bedroom thinking you're coming to the Kasbah and have a 4.5-hour walk to get to the lodge. And just to remind you what the site looked like when we started. And it's what it looks like now. thanks to a British architect called John Bothamley, who helped us design this. So, quick takeaways: we're 40 miles from Marrakesh, 90 minutes from the airport, only 10 miles further up than Richard Branson's Kasbah Tamadot, if any of you know that. We're staffed entirely by local staff. There's 44 of them. There's no road access. We're in the shadow of the mountains. We have 14 ensuite rooms. It's a great base for walking, trekking, hiking, or climbing up Toubkal. We have 2 neighboring small lodges, and we're a founder member of the National Geographic Unique Lodges of the world. Job done. There was the objective. That's what we got to. Next slide. I think there's one more slide. And here we see the girls. The girls and the boys do seem to lead fairly separate lives, but you will come on to hear more about EFA later. Thank you very much for paying attention.
Thank you very much, Chris. And now Jose is going to take over, and thank you everyone for bearing with us on that. I think that we actually just forgot to take off the timer on the presentation, so I apologize if there was a little bit of a choppiness there. And fantastic. Oop, Jose, you are muted. Hold on one second, Jose, you're still muted.
I think it should be okay now.
Yep.
Yep. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for attending this webinar. I'll try to make it entertaining. And well, my name is Jose. I am marketing manager for Voyage Morocco. I've been living in Morocco for about 14 years now. I came initially on holiday, 1 month. I liked it. Came back for 3 months, and at the end of the 3 months, I just said, oh, okay, I'm gonna look for a job here, I'm gonna stay, I like the place. And well, I worked in the north of the country for a year, and then I met Mike, and I started to work in Voyage. And I am very happy working with the agency, and also being part of this multi-dimensional project of Mike and Chris. Let's go then. So this is a picture of the entrance to our offices. I just feature it because we opened our new offices 1 year ago, and we are very happy about it. And we have our motto in the entrance, which is just dream, we'll take care of the rest. I think it's quite self-evident. What we like is to listen to our clients and then look for the means to create the perfect trip for them, the perfect Morocco trip for them. We opened in 2006, founded by Chris and Mike, a Moroccan entrepreneur called Selvan Berrada. Initially, we started as a company that was going to provide the Kasbah du Toubkal with trekking services, but very, very quickly we developed a kind of clientele that wanted to do also other things, or just didn't want trekking at all. We started to service them, and by 2007 we were invited to become a Virtuoso Onsite. We accepted the invitation, obviously. Currently there are 3 in the country. We are the best one. And well, in 2009 we became members of Pure, which is this experiential travel show happening in Marrakesh every year in September. And not this year because of the coronavirus experience or emergency, but hopefully next year we'll be back. We are also XO private, preferred DMC since 2010. Obviously, we support education for all and the philosophy behind it. And we work mainly as B2B. We don't reject direct clients if they inquire, but we don't do any active marketing to attract them either. As we started as a trekking company for Kasbah du Toubkal, that's why we have the word mountain in our name, but currently we are much more than that. We are based in Gilis, which is the French quarter of Marrakesh, very central. and we've grown quite a bit from 6 members of staff in 2007 to 35 members now, plus another secondary office in near the Majorel Gardens. Our team is multinational, hailing from Morocco, Spain, Mexico, France, and the United Kingdom. And we work with several markets, mainly with the US, Latin America, Canada, Australia, Northern Europe, and we are starting now to receive inquiries as well from Russians and Chinese people. We have our own transportation company, and well, we provide all sorts of travel solutions on request. Last year we had more than 1,500 travelers. Most of them were happy with us. I think we are doing well. Our values, well, I think the main value or the main asset that we have is that this combination of Western approach to business through the Western staff, no? And then the local knowledge that the local staff provides, and other features. Now we have a strong partnership with the local suppliers, a good reputation, and we try always to be creative and proactive, so clients are happy with us. I'm gonna now go through very quickly, or as quickly as I can, through an overview of Morocco. This I will leave many things out, but time is limited. But these are the highlights for me. No, well, Morocco is a country that is very close to Spain, just 20 miles from the southern shores of Spain, but really it feels very, very different. So when you arrive in the country, you feel that you are in Africa, and you feel that you are in a place that has little to do with the West. I think this is a very nice virtue of Morocco, that you really need half an hour from Spain or so by ferry, and suddenly, well, you are in another continent and in another culture. It's a country which is very varied, with beaches, mountain ranges, very old cities. Each one is different from the other, and a lot of different cultures. The country has been visited or colonized by the Greek, by the Roman, by the Phoenicians, by the Portuguese, by the French, by the Spaniards, by the British. So, and everyone left something in the country, but despite this, the country keeps a very, very distinct identity that one doesn't know very well how to define, but which is Moroccanness, and which is very distinct. It's a very welcoming and safe country, very tolerant. They've had a Christian population and a Jewish population for centuries, and no religious tensions at all between them. And well, the crime rate is much lower than in Europe, for instance. I mean, I feel much safer living in Morocco than living in Europe. It's a country that was defined by former King Hassan II as a tree whose roots are in Africa and whose branches breathe European air. And I think it's a very nice definition. Because of this melting pot that Morocco is, it's a country that has attracted always creative people, artists, designers, and it's a country that, to me, it appeals to the inner child that we have in us. When we were children, our parents would tell us, don't use your hands to eat. You cannot eat with your fingers. Well, in Morocco, this is the elegant way to eat. You know, don't sit on the floor. In Morocco, everybody, if they are tired, they just sit on the floor. It's a country where really you can feel very free and like a child. However, it is a country as well that, to me, is one of those countries that you really need a DMC, Morocco, because there are always little things that, if you don't know, could get you not into trouble, but could spoil somehow part of your trip. And the DMC is what makes sure that you won't encounter those problems. As an anecdote, for instance, this is a map of Morocco, and it's the kind of map that you should never use And we've had problems with agencies that they would just print lots of maps of Morocco for their literature, and then Morocco would say, no, 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 I mean, this is not a map of Morocco. Why? Because this red arrow is showing that there is a border between Morocco and Western Sahara, and Moroccans claim sovereignty over the Western Sahara. So just this small detail, well, the police will tell you, are you are you trying to question or integrity or territorial integrity, you know? So this sort of little things is just an example, but you need a DMC to tell you, really. Otherwise, you can get into a hassle. The best periods to come to Morocco are spring and autumn, and very broadly. So from February to mid-June, you can come, it's very nice. And from September to December. They are also high season, so high season is most of the year. So you should book well in advance if you want to come over. Winter, the deep winter is interesting because the weather is very mild, and the hotels tend to have lower rates. So you can propose Morocco for your clients in winter as well. If you can avoid it, don't come in July and August because it is really hot. I can tell you that we are now something like 45 degrees Celsius right now in Marrakesh. That's why I'm sweaty, which is the natural way to be in Morocco in this period of the year. And the south encampments are starting to close, or have been for a couple of years already closing in summer. So if you want to know the south, you should come in other periods. However, if you go to the mountains or you go to the coast, it's a nice place to be. The mountains are quite cooler than the cities and the plains. You should also avoid Ramadan because Moroccans get very sleepy and sulky, and then the quality of the presents a bit. And also, well, you have the monuments have reduced timetables, or sometimes they just don't open without prior notice, and the street life is not as lively as it is usually. Ramadan next year will be from 12th April to 11th May. So bear it in mind and let the clients know if they would like to travel during those periods. And also, well, try always to book as much in advance as possible, because you have Christmas, they require five nights or more minimum stay policy for hotels in Marrakesh. You have in Fes and Essaouira and in Rabat, you have festivals in June, so music festivals, so it's cramped as well, and it's difficult to find hotels. And then, well, the Chinese are starting to come in numbers as well, and the Chinese New Year is starting to become very popular as well. Next year, I think, is around February, around 12th February. I will now give an overview of what to me are the highlights of Morocco. No, a city that I like a lot is Fes. It's a city which is very conservative, very traditional. A very spiritual city. All big madrasas, Quranic schools are in Fes, very old, 1,200 years old city. And surprisingly enough, in the region, just 1 hour away from Fes, where you have the best vineyards in the country. So it is very spiritual, very Muslim. But if you want a nice cup of wine, Meknes, which is near Fes, is the perfect place to be. Is the best vineyards in the country are there. It's another, which is Bab Boujiloud, one of the gates of the city. And this would be, well, a general panoramic, well, not general, but a little panoramic view of Fes. You have near Fes as well Volubilis, which are Roman ruins. UNESCO heritage site is very, very, very well preserved Roman ruins and worth a visit. And you have loads of activities that you can have there. A Sufi dinner, which is a dinner with a Muslim brotherhood, and you can listen to their chants and how they play music. It's very hypnotic. Textile tours, because Fes is one of the very few places where you still can find traditional draw looms for textiles and other activities. Marrakesh, well, Marrakesh is so important for the story of Morocco that, as a matter of fact, Morocco is called Morocco because of Marrakesh, not the other way around. And it's a city that it has a very nice mixture of the ancient and the modern. So you can, when you just cross one of the gates from the French Quarter to the Medina, you automatically are 5 centuries behind in just 20 steps. So it is very, very nice feeling that you get of being a very kind of surrealist city. And also it has attracted many designers, Yves Saint Laurent, but also modern designers now have their shops there and workshops and drawing inspiration from the artisans of Marrakesh. And it's a city that for artists is very inspiring, and you have very cool and trendy restaurants, concept stores, all these things. Another picture of the Kutubia Square. You can have there, well, it's a thing that we sell a lot and is very popular, which is in a sidecar driven by an expatriate. You get to see things that guides would not take you to see in Marrakesh, and it's an activity that is becoming very popular. Or there will be ballooning ride, Berber medicine in the High Atlas, which is just 1.5 hours away from Marrakesh, food tasting tours of the Medina, exclusive shopping tours, many activities to do there as well. Another region that you must see is the south. And the south, to me, the strongest impression about the south is the timelessness. You really don't know very well, notwithstanding cars and all that you won't see many anyway. You don't know very well if you are in the 20th century, in the 14th century, or when. They live in a very traditional fashion, and this is very interesting to see as well. You have very remoteness feeling and remote places, contrasts, because the oases are very, very verdant and very full of plants and trees, but then you have the desert, which is totally the opposite, obviously. Hushed quality, I call it. It's like even if you shout in the desert, it's like if the sound is not as strong. It's very curious. And then, well, Martian landscapes, of course. In fact, the space agency, American Space Agency, train astronauts in the Sahara Desert. So you can have encampments there. Some of them are very beautiful and very luxurious and very comfortable. And we work with them, of course. And it's an experience. And this is one of the views you can see from your tent when you wake up in the morning. So a very beautiful place. And the camel ride, which is the most popular activity in Morocco, obviously. And I would not recommend it more than half an hour because you really get sores. But very nice. Just bear in mind that clients need at least 3 nights to go to the desert and come back, either from Fez or from Marrakesh. And the direct flights are only 2 or 3 times a week, and sometimes they delay. Not many options in terms of accommodation, no restaurants outside hotels, so people must be booked on half boat by default. And if your clients are wealthy, propose to them an helicopter transfer to the desert. It's a very comfortable way to go, and really flying over the High Atlas Mountains is an experience. It's really beautiful. The north is a part of the country which is starting to develop now for international tourism. But for the moment, it keeps being like a place that only Moroccans go to. And because of that, I really like it. You can see an occasional Spaniards there, but nothing else. A few Spaniards and then the Moroccans. And in many sense, is the most authentic part of Morocco, being so close to Europe. Is at the same time much more traditional than the south, and you have beautiful landscapes. The weather and the landscapes are a little bit like in Scotland, in the UK. So it's not what you would expect from Morocco, and I like it a lot. I go there every year, and I recommend it for your clients. This will be a view of Tetuan, which is to be the most beautiful city in Morocco. There is very rural area, excellent food, peasants, markets. This will be the banyan tree, just 30 kilometers away from Tetuan on the coast, a magnificent hotel. This will be a view of the coast, the Mediterranean coast in Marrakesh. I took this picture, it was something like 10 kilometers away from Tetuan, and then you have this deserted beaches, really beautiful, with this feeling of Andalusia and the Andalusian coast in Spain 50 or 60 years ago. Or Chefchaouen, which is just a couple of hours from Tetuan, and is a magic blue city, one of the most beautiful cities in the world, they say. The Atlantic coast is very interesting as well. You have excellent food there, handcrafts, especially wood. They are masters at it, dramatic landscapes, and bohemian food, fun, especially in Essaouira, which is a city with a lot of jazz bands, painters, art galleries. This will be Essaouira, and it's just 2 hours and a half by drive from Marrakesh. Or Walidia, with the best oysters in Morocco, very cheap oysters. So you can eat oysters for a fraction of the price in the West. And we can arrange picnics on the coast for you to drink wine and eat oysters. This would be La Sultana in Walidia, has a property there, which is very beautiful. And the Atlas Mountains that Chris has been talking about, very hospitable people, the most hospitable people, I would say, in Morocco. A very simple life. If you love nature, but you must go there, and it's one of the best places in the world as well for trekking. The Kasbah du Toubkal, a very beautiful way of it, and this is Kasbah Tamadot in the High Atlas Mountains for clients that like ultra luxury. Kasbah Tamadot would be the place. Kasbah Tamadot as well, nice dinners that you can have there. And that's it. Very quick presentation. Thank you very much. And we look forward to welcoming you as soon as the borders open.
Thank you very much, Jose. And so now we're going to turn it over to Sonia, and she is going to share with you a little bit about Education for All.
Thank you so much, Brooke. And thank you, Chris and Jose. I really enjoyed these presentations. I'll just get mine here also. Yes, I also have a bit of a story with Morocco as well, which I'll explain a bit about before I present Education for All. Okay. Oh, I'm just trying to share my screen here. It's not working. Let's try now. How's that? Does that work now?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yes. So, it's lovely to virtually meet you all, and thank you, again, for the great presentations. And it's perfect to bring in Education for All now, really having set the context of Morocco is just such a beautiful country to visit, and then also the Kasbah du Toubkal, which I also visited for the first time about 20 years ago. I'd never been to Morocco. I graduated from university. I didn't know what I was going to do with my life, but I spoke Arabic and I spoke French. I'm half Egyptian. and half Scottish. Anyway, I did a very naive Google search, naive because Google was pretty naive then in 1999, and I searched for Arabic and French, jobs with Arabic and French. And what appeared as I pressed the return button was a picture of the Kasbah. I had no idea what it was. I didn't know where it was. I couldn't even begin to guess where it was. And even when I discovered it was in Morocco, that didn't make sense to me, because I didn't think Morocco was mountains, and I just always had this idea of Morocco being just deserts, and so the whole thing was very fascinating to me. But I guess the short story of it all is that I became introduced to Discover Limited, and that's how I met Chris and Mike. And that's how I was introduced to Morocco. And I think if it wasn't for meeting them, I probably, even if I had gone to Morocco, might never have known how just so incredible the High Atlas region is, and how incredible the people there are. And so that was a very special time for me. And then I went on to work in London. I worked for human rights organizations, and I was just really fascinated with social justice and people having equal opportunities. And I was particularly interested in women also. I'm half Egyptian, but I grew up in the UK. But from my visits to Egypt with the family, I could see definitely that being a woman there was very, very different from my experience of being a woman in the UK. And so yeah, women, education was really important to me, because they were things that I had received just through the grace of where I'd been born. And so when I heard about Education for All, when I knew that, because Mike is one of the founders also of the charity, I was always very interested and always asking Mike, so what's happening with the charity? And I just felt really moved to one day be a part of it. I really like the very simple solution to, a big issue. And so Education for All has basically brought a very simple solution to very high rates of illiteracy in this particular area of Morocco, the High Atlas. And of course, these wonderful pictures that Jose showed us, from a tourist point of view, how beautiful to visit these villages that are cut into the mountainside. You feel like you're in Tibet, you feel like you're in an ancient land. And from a tourist perspective, that's amazing. But the reality also is that people are living there. People are living in these very simple houses that maybe have two main rooms, one room that you sleep in and one room that you sit and eat in. And of course, if you're a girl from these villages, you basically, you have many obstacles to access education. So some people say, well, why do you focus on girls? Well, probably all of you listening will know the answer to that. Women make up more than 2/3 of the world's illiterate people, and that's, by some statistics, around almost 800 million. So, women face more obstacles, girls face more obstacles in education. And in this particular part of Morocco, it's very different from other parts of Morocco. If you are in Marrakesh, you'll see girls and boys going to school, you'll see lots of transport, and Morocco is fairly progressive in terms of education for, well, first of all, the provision of education, and girls have equal access, and also for university. However, as soon as you make that journey from Marrakesh and start climbing up into the mountains, which is a breathtaking experience in itself, you also start to see that life is very, very different there. And of course, the further you go into the mountains, you really see extremely remote rural villages. And so the experience of being a young person there is very, very different from being from one of the big cities. And in the High Atlas, the illiteracy rates for girls is very, very high. And this was one of the buttons that was pushed that I know influenced the founders to find a solution to this. You know, they were asking, well, why are girls not at school? Oh, well, the schools are too far away and it's not safe for the girls to go there. Okay, so then let's find a safe place right next to the schools for the girls to live. And that was the solution of Education for All in 2007. That's when it began. Of course, poverty is a really, you know, it's a big topic in these remote rural areas. However, education in itself helps to break the cycle of poverty. So just the simple solution to bring girls to the schools, give them somewhere safe to live during the week, you know, feed them, give them, you know, everything that they need, and also provide them with the travel to go back to their families at the weekends. It's a simple yet highly effective and also very cost-effective solution to a huge problem. And so as I mentioned, yeah, distance, poverty are big obstacles. However, also cultural attitudes, and in these very, you could say, conservative remote villages. And I love this this picture because it really gives a sense of, you know, when we say remote, we don't, you know, maybe it's, okay, 2 hours away from, maybe this village is 2 hours away from the town where the school is, where the secondary school is. However, this is the kind of journey that a girl would have to make, even to find a road where there might be a car or might not be a car or a taxi to take her actually into the town. So we're talking really remote villages. But yeah, because they're so isolated and remote, then obviously the cultural attitudes have just been very, very different from the rest of Morocco. There has not really been a sense of prioritizing education for women, just so much better to keep them at home. They can help with all the many daily chores around the house, including looking after the younger siblings. I mean, you don't see washing machines really in these villages. You will see girls and their mothers down by the river scrubbing clothes in the river. So just to give a real context about how different it is in this region of Morocco. And actually, there's a link here, but I think you'll hopefully receive the slides after. But UNESCO made a film and they followed one of our girls, Fatima, from the EFA boarding houses back to her village. And I think it was such a difficult journey that even the actual filming team, they actually cut their trip a bit shorter because it was just, you know, it rained, you know, the rivers overflowed, they were on the back of trucks. And this was just Fatima's journey if she had to go back to her village. And so, but they made a really great film. And yeah, as I said, you can have access to that. So yes, the solution, girls' boarding house, is brilliant. And, you know, there are boarding houses in this area, some run by the government, some run by kind of the local community. However, yeah, they're not the best learning environment. They're also not free, so they do exclude extremely poor families. And many families don't really feel that they want to send their daughters to these boarding houses because they're, you know, there's maybe 200 girls in a class, maybe 3 sharing a bed. So the EFA boarding houses, you can say, are just an amazing model of what's possible. And yeah, it just really blew my mind going to to visit the boarding houses the first time. I think it was 2013 that I went for the first time, and amazing to see how the project had grown. You know, it started in 2007, I believe, with renting a small apartment with 1 house mother and 10 girls. And then by the time I came along in 2013, they already had 3 houses, about 150 girls, 3 house mothers, and it's even grown again in the years I've been there. It's doubled its capacity, and it's just really amazing. And the reason that it's done that is because it's successful. It's successful. Not only are the girls thriving, but, you know, the communities are just so bursting with pride, you know, to see the results in their daughters, to see the impact it's had just back in the villages themselves. And I'll give a nice example. Once I was visiting, I usually go out a few times a year and stay in the boarding houses. And yeah, one of the house mothers said to me, that there was a family that had to make a very important decision, and that the father had actually delayed the meeting for this decision because he said, I want to wait until our daughter comes back on Saturday. I want to speak to her, and then we will make this decision. And so, you know, these girls have become like, are giving their communities access to knowledge that they don't even have, because they haven't been educated themselves. Most of the families are illiterate. So suddenly these girls are like bringing something very special back to their communities. And also another example is that, you know, some of the girls do choose, after they've completed their education at the EFA boarding houses and done their baccalaureate, some do go back to the villages, but they go back and they become teachers in the primary school, or they, you know, they get married, and then they are very involved in then the business that their husband might have. Maybe they're doing the accounting for the gîte business, or they're speaking English and French to the guests and the people, the tourists who are coming. So it's, yeah, the impact really ripples out. I just thought I'd give a sense of how much it costs. I deal with all the fundraising for EFA, so it's an important aspect for me. But what I find is brilliant is that it's only $4 a day, $4 or €4 a day, and it just changes a girl's life completely. And so, yeah, we do have travel companies that also just really love this kind of powerful example of how people visiting Morocco can get to know about this issue whilst especially traveling in that area. Many of the clients of the Kasbah du Toubkal learn about EFA because there's literature about EFA everywhere, and so they feel very inspired to you know, to use their privileges as people that can afford to travel the world and stay in beautiful places, and just for such a small contribution make a change to someone's life, and also to transform her family, her community. And really, when you educate a girl, you educate the next generation, so it's a great return on investment, you could say. And that $4 a day means that we can give a free place to a girl. And we only give free places, so we want to reach the girls from the remotest villages and the poorest villages. And then they'll have their own comfy bed, hot showers, 3 delicious meals a day. I can vouch for that, having stayed there many years. Access to books and computers. Now, this might just seem not such a big deal for us, but I'm going to show you a photo soon, and then you'll understand why that's a big deal to have access to books and computers. Support lessons. We run an international volunteer program. So although these houses are run by local women, which is really important to us, and I'll say more about that in a couple of minutes, we also want the girls to have a window into the world. And so we do have volunteers, women from other countries, a lot from America, France, and the UK, but also more now. We've had some volunteers from Egypt and Nigeria, but you know, so that the girls can get to know other women who have careers, who travel, who have very different lives from them, just to give them access to another perspective on life as young women. We also have people come in and give talks. So we had a scientist, a female scientist from NASA, who was traveling in the High Atlas and heard about us and wanted to come and speak to the girls about considering careers that maybe don't seem accessible to them. So, you know, we just give them so many opportunities to broaden their horizons, which is an important part of their education as the formal education they're receiving at school. And we also ensure that they have transport to go home at the weekends, so that they can keep that bond with their families. That's important also. And yes, the house mothers are, I'd say they're the heart of the houses. The project is a success because of them. They create the home and the environment for the girls. They really are dedicated to the girls. I don't know how they do it. It's like having 30 or 40 daughters. That's quite a feat. And Khadija, who you can see there in the middle of this image, I spoke to her once, and she said, whilst picking at her grey hairs, each one of these hairs is for each of the girls in the houses. You know, the house mothers, they stay up at night if the girls, you know, have, you know, any problems at home, or if they're struggling with their studies. You know, they encourage them and keep them motivated. They give so much love and care to them. And so our houses are entirely run by women, and they're all local women. And so in itself, this is an also beautiful part of the empowerment of women in this region. And yeah, the results have been incredible. I don't think when the FA was set up, it was set up to achieve these results. The mission was to just get girls access to the schools, and actually what they did when they were at school was not really something that we felt was in our control. However, what we've come to see is that not only are we providing them access to school, but the environment that the houses provide, it's like fertile soil for their flourishing and development. They are going way beyond what we expected of them. You know, they're passing their baccalaureate. We have had an average 90+% pass for all the exams, the baccalaureate exams and also the college exams. And last year we had 100% pass for the baccalaureate. Now in Morocco, the baccalaureate pass is around 57%. That's the national average. So these girls are whipping the national average, and they're from, you know, very poor, isolated villages. They get access to education, a nice environment to learn, access to books, computers, and that's it. They're off. They're really showing their potential, and it's very, very heartwarming to witness that. And you know, we've had around 150 girls now enrolled at university since 2013, when the first girls went to university. And also 3 girls went on full scholarships last year to a university in Casablanca. And we have 2 girls who are now studying their master's degrees. I don't think anyone in the village even knows what the master's degree is. So, you know, they really are becoming important role models in their villages, and really, you know, the women of the future of Morocco. So yes, with the FA, my dreams and ambitions began. This was something that a girl called Mona, who's one of the first ever girls to start with the FA, this is something that she said when she gave a speech, I think at the ambassador's residence, when she was invited with the other girls to a celebration because they'd passed their baccalaureate. They were the first girls at EFA to pass the baccalaureate. And this is really what EFA does. It gives access to education, but it's really the beginning of the dreams and ambitions of these girls. And then, of course, they go back into their villages and inspire their sisters and their cousins. And you know, and I've heard one of the volunteers who went back to visit one of the girls in her family say that, you know, all the women of the village came out singing when the girl came back from school. You know, this is just how proud they are. And I've also heard that one woman said to her daughter, you know, everything you're doing at EFA, you're doing for me, because I didn't have this opportunity. So, you know, it's amazing to see what a change just one generation can make. And of course, educating girls, we can break the cycle of poverty. You know, they can enter into the workforce, they can really have financial freedom, they can marry when they're older, they can have smaller families, healthier children. They're more likely to educate their own daughters, and, you know, they have a voice. They suddenly have a voice in their communities, and their voice really needs to be heard. And there's been a very beautiful short film, it's only 20 minutes long, that was made about EFA last year. And yeah, you'll also have access to that, I think, in the follow-up material. This is the photo I was speaking about. It's not a very good quality, I apologize, but it's from the girl's phone. But this is Rita. She's 20 years old. She passed her baccalaureate on a full scholarship. She got a full scholarship to study in Casablanca last year. She comes from an exceptionally poor village where, you know, it's very common that the girls actually get sent off to work as maids for wealthier families. Her mother stood her ground, not wanting Rita to be sent away, although they were an exceptionally poor family. And you know, this is Rita coming back home because of the lockdown, trying to study in her village. And so again, I think this picture shows why the EFA houses are so important. It's, you know, it's just not really the best learning environment for these girls. I mean, she's doing her best. She's wrapped up in blankets to stay warm, and her dad's helped her construct some kind of study room. But, you know, the EFA houses give the girls just the space and the freedom to learn and to really focus on that. And so, yes, how am I doing for time, Brooke?
Well, we've actually hit the hour, and so we've had,
hit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But
well, I just wanted to give an example of what other travel companies have been doing for EFA, and that's just an example of the Intrepid Foundation. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to, let me see here. All right. Oops. All right, well, I'm going to start with a couple of the questions that have come through. And first for you, Chris, for orientation purposes, can you just remind us, please, the Kasbah, is it 12 miles further from Richard Branson's?
Yes. And there's only one road. There's a road that goes past Richard Branson's place. And if you just keep going, the road runs out. And there's a car park, you stop there, and the 15-minute walk or mule ride to get up to the Kasbah.
Fantastic.
So it's the same, you know, a day trip from Marrakesh, a day out.
And I'm going to say, I think this one might be for Jose. And Jose, right now you're on mute, so just make sure that you are unmuted. Can you recommend which desert is best? Excuse my pronunciation. Erg Chebi, Merzuga, or Erg Chigaga, Mohammed?
Okay. Yeah. Well, I think they are different in the sense that Merzuga is much more spectacular, but Mohammed or Chigaga feels much more remote or much more wild. So also
far less crowded.
Yeah. Merzuga is easier to integrate in an itinerary because you can go from Fez and then you go to Merzuga, and from Merzuga you head from Marrakesh or vice versa. Whereas if you want to go to Chigaga, you pretty much have to just go there purposely and then come back. No, it's not something that you can integrate very easily in an itinerary. But for first timers that are not really keen people on people very keen on nature, or they just want to see Morocco, I would probably take them to Merzuga always. But for people who like really wild, out of the beaten path places, then probably Mohammed is better.
Excellent. Can you do Marrakesh to Erg Chigaga in a day, as in a straight drive?
No.
No.
Yes.
No.
Not in legal hours, though. Your driver would be outside legal hours.
You drive between 8 to 10 hours and you are there. But it's not something that I would do. I would stay for the night. It's not something that you can go from Marrakesh, see it, and come back to Marrakesh. I mean, you will be most of the time driving.
Can I say something, Jose?
Yes.
So, you know, we chartered a jet and went down for 24 hours from Marrakesh, leaving at 10 o'clock in the morning, landing at Zagara, driving to Chigaga, and coming back. That works well, but you know, driving is horrible. But having said that, when you get to the desert, the journey disappears. You are seeing the Sahara Desert. You know, it is traveling, but I wouldn't do it in one go.
No, I would probably stop in Skura, for instance, or in Ouarzazate. Stop there, which is very, very nice oasis, Skura, and then go from there to Zagora and then to Chigaga. I would stop in the middle for the night. Otherwise, it's very tiring. I mean, in terms of kilometers, it's not a big distance, but you have to cross the high Atlas Mountains, and that's a very, very challenging drive. So.
And I like, Chris, that you mentioned Pure. They do pre and post excursions up to the Kasbah from Marrakesh as well. So if in years to come anybody is attending Pure, definitely look for that. I've gone up and had lunch there, along with actually stayed there before trekking through the Atlas, and it's just such a beautiful spot. So drive Marrakesh to Zagora overnight and then drive back?
And then drive down to the desert. But you can drive Marrakesh to Ouarzazate is half a day's drive, and you would see the edge of the desert. There is some dunes near Zagora, but the big dunes are down in Chigaga or Chebi.
Yeah,
so we both agree.
That's where I need to go this past year before
And
Pure
then,
Essaouira.
sorry, there is then a stony desert outside Marrakesh, which is not a sandy dune desert, but it is a stony desert about 35 minutes, 40 minutes outside Marrakesh, which is also worth a visit and is slightly off-grid.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if we have any more questions. As of right now, there aren't any, but if people do have some, please go ahead and put them in. And then, of course, that follow-up will continue to have everyone's follow-up or information so that you can follow up with them. And Lily is just wanting us to clarify the Agafay Desert. Is that the one?
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah,
That's the stony desert I was mentioning.
Yeah,
It's 100 minutes outside of Marrakesh.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hi, Lily.
Most of the Sahara Desert is stony desert. Only a small proportion of it is sand.
Yeah, well, it's the most similar thing to a desert that you can find near Marrakesh, but it's just a rocky, arid extension. It's very nice. I mean, you have the high Atlas Mountains there. You can see them in all its splendor, and very beautiful area, but not a sand desert really.
It works well for people who just haven't got time to a slightly desert experience and a desert camp out in the countryside, who can't afford several days to go to Sheikh-Gargar.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a compromise between traveling at least two, you've got a full day, an absolute full day's travel to get to Sheikh-Gargar. You can do it in a day, but it's 8 hours driving. So if people like 8 hours to 10 hours driving in a day for one night, and then 8 or 10 hours driving back, but I wouldn't recommend it.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. That was what we needed clarified. So we're all set there. And if there aren't any more questions, again, I know that we've gone over a little bit, we can wrap up. But if anybody does have questions, please feel free to ask. And if not, in the meantime, I'll just say thank you to everyone who joined us. And we're getting some really wonderful comments from people. So thank you very much for your time, everyone. What I'm hearing is everyone really liked the combination of the presentation with the different things that we focused on. And I know it's a lot for 1 hour, but very happy to see all of that really wonderful positivity coming back at us. So great.
Thank you, Brooke.
Pleasure for us.
Thank you very much. Thank you for everyone who's listening.
Thanks everyone for listening.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sonia, for an emotive thing on education for all.
And thank you very much for listening to me as well. It's been great being here.